Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Sasquatch Watch Radio with your hosts, Billy Willard and the Blog Squatcher. Strap in, hold on tight, get ready, because it is about to go down.
Hello and welcome. It is Monday, June 8th, 2009. You are indeed dialed into Sasquatch Watch Radio, even though I am not Billy Willard. I am DB, the Blog Squatcher. Billy is not going to be here this evening, or he may show up a little later, I suppose. It depends on how things go for him. There's nothing wrong with Billy, so don't worry. He's just had something come up. As you know, tonight we have Scott Herriot as our guest, and we'll be getting to him in a moment. Tonight, filling in the spot that I usually would take, we're going to have JC. And he'll be watching the chat, and he will be, taking your questions from chat and bringing it to our attention. I'm just waiting for him to call in, and I think this is him here now. So let me click this button. Yeah, click the button. There it goes. JC, is that you?
Yeah, the world's greatest Bigfoot hunter is here to bail you out again, DB.
Yeah, I'm going to need you to bail me out, JC. I'm going to need a lot of help. Ordinarily, we would fill some of this time here with news, but I didn't really come across a lot of news that I'm going to talk about. But how about you, JC? Did you happen to come across any news that you would like to talk about before we start?
No, I haven't really had any chance to look at any news yet. I just got home from work not long ago.
That's right. You came home from work and immediately you were pressed into service as a co-host. Well, you are a trooper and we appreciate your help. All right, then, without any further ado, let us welcome our guest tonight, Scott Herriot. Scott, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Stevie. Excuse me, you caught me in mid-cough.
Well,
I'm an old man. Thanks. Hey, it's nice to be on, and it'd be nice to talk to Billy, too, if he makes it to the show. Hope everything is going okay with him, and thanks again for having me on.
No problem. We're really glad we were able to get you on the show. And now I know there's a bunch of stuff that you could talk about because, for instance, there's a few movies that you've done, or do you call them movies or do you call them documentaries?
I guess, well, they're documentaries that are movies, I suppose. I usually call them documentaries. I mean, the first one I did, Journey Towards Squatchdom, which I did back in '95, is really a mockumentary. It was like kind of inspired by a lot of people I've heard about or met in Sasquatchery, because I take it pretty seriously, but I try to have a sense of humor about it. But then, you meet or hear about these folks who have like 29 sightings and whatnot. So I kind of wanted to have fun with that dimension of the community. And then in '02, 7 years ago, I did Squatching, which was kind of a serio comic, half and half. Wanted to have some fun too, but discuss some serious aspects of the phenomena, including what had happened to me in '92. So, I guess documentaries. And ironically enough, they're available on one DVD, DB. Say that.
Oh, really?
Fast. Yes, that's right. They're at Amazon. It's the only place I sell them. And if you search on Squatching or Journey Towards Squatchdom, it should take you right to them. And then you will buy them. Sorry,
that's right. Everybody out there listening now, you are obligated to buy because
absolutely
God says so. Very important that you do that. All right, well, we got the commercials out of the way then. But are you going to do any more of these documentaries about Sasquatch research, or do you feel like you've kind of tap that out?
I don't know. That's a great question. I mean, I really still love the phenomena so much. It's such an interesting. I mean, you being involved with this, just the people alone, and then the fact that it's going through time and there still isn't any definitive proof, and I don't know. I'm not immediately planning to, but I'm certainly open to that possibility. If I felt I had a unique enough idea and I wasn't already working on something else, I would definitely be interested in it. So I don't know, maybe something along the lines of just like not a sequel per se to Squatching, but just more interviews with people maybe I've met on both a serious and comedic level pertaining to the phenomena. But as you know, there is a lot of humor, intentional and otherwise, in this field, and I think it's important to keep a sense of humor, or you could literally go insane. So,
well, some probably already have gone insane.
Exactly.
And yeah, well, what thought just occurred to me is, there's a market for some cryptozoological features, like Monster Quest is doing pretty well. Well, you know what if you were to approach History Channel with this idea? You'd go around interviewing people and it would be funny.
Yeah. Okay. Now I don't know if I'm. This is so bizarre that you just said that. And this folks
really?
Listening, this is not because and I don't want to like jinx anything, but I'll just tell it like it is right now. I actually got approached by a man in a trench coat. No, by some folks. It's a production company out of New Zealand that are looking on doing a show, a cryptozoological show, internationally, maybe with an emphasis in the U.S. Anyway, they've seen my films and other stuff I've done on TV, and I was actually just talking to them today on the phone, and I'm being considered to be a host of it. So I'm grateful for that. I hope it works out. But that's is this some kind of setup? Are you working with them, DB? Is that what's going on?
No. I don't know how that happened. It's just one of those things.
Weird.
Synchronicity.
Exactly. A little serendipity there, hopefully. So anybody listening who doesn't hate me following the Yakima Roundup cluster F, please think good thoughts because Lord knows I need the work.
Yeah. Well, that would be cool.
That's all I can really say about it right now. It's cryptozoological in nature. It involves interviewing people, and I would hopeful to be involved with it in one way or another. So we'll see what shakes out.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that would be exciting. We need more, Bigfoot stuff on TV, even if ultimately they're gonna, make it funny. Still,
I know. It's just, I got to be honest. I'm not. And maybe I haven't given them a fair shake, but I'm not a huge fan of like Monster Quest. I think, or those types of shows right now, because the thing is, in the last 10 years or so, it's been, realized these shows do really well ratings-wise. They just, and so, let's get another one. Let's make another one. But what happens is as you get this recycling effect. Same old stories are hashed over again. And I think the temptation to add a lot of BS happens, which I think definitely happens. The hyping, the over-dramatization. And if you do that without humor, in my opinion, that's horrible TV. It's BS. It's like, we're going to find out if there's any evidence in the squirrel's butt, but first we'll be right, it's like, there's so much of this now that I guess as a follower of the phenomena, you figure if there had been any really strong evidence found, it probably would have been heard about, through the various forums online, shows like yours, whatever. It would have been heard. So it just seems like that element of hype is at such a fever pitch that I'm personally just not that interested in watching it. But I agree. I think humor. Maybe it is the time for that, because the topic in and of itself, I think, still is. But man, if you got nothing new in the way of evidence, what else are you going to do? spin your wheels and be redundant. Well, that is a lot of TV actually is like that. So never mind.
Yeah. That may be a formula for success.
Yeah,
but I
agree. I don't know.
A new slant would be good. I agree that's. I would be willing to watch a show that is going to take some, take a different angle, and even if it's a humorous angle, I mean, I'm not afraid of being made fun of. Hopefully, it would be gently making fun of people, because not all Bigfoot researchers really like that very much.
Yeah, I know. There's, I think, I don't know. It's just there's, you know what it would be? I think what's really, as far as I'm concerned, I've never seen a film that has actually been done seriously, meaning a serious drama concerning the Sasquatch phenomena. I mean, the closest thing, sadly enough, would be like Harry and the Hendersons. I mean, that was a kids' film with a big goofy-faced Sasquatch, and not a bad movie, but pretty much all the other ones are these schlocky B-film, things that they're usually not very good films. But I think it's the idea of Bigfoot is so ingrained in our culture as being so goofy that it's hard. It's a hard sell. I mean, the name doesn't help. Bigfoot. It just doesn't. It evokes great things like the Jack Links ads are great. Those are funny ads. That's a good use, I think, of the icon of Bigfoot. But just a serious film. Let's say positing the notion like, okay, maybe these things in fact are real. Okay, so maybe something of a researcher and I don't know, a female researcher, and possibly getting close to one and discovering, and like other high primates had been discovered a lot, or been able to be approached closely by women, something like that, or just something that was more down to earth and not either schlocky or hyped too much. I think people are afraid. They don't think they can do it because it's Bigfoot, so it has to be goofy, So
yeah, either goofy
so I don't know.
or over the top horror.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's such a popular icon in so many ways. I mean, people love the goofiness, like mentioned. I think the actual cryptozoological mystery of it is fascinating to a lot of people. And so we'll see what shakes out of it. But I'm actually a little amazed that it hasn't happened yet. That maybe it's just they have to get away from the term Bigfoot, make it sound a little more prestigious, like it's a relic hominid, but there's still these perhaps these man-like beings that still exist in the world that haven't been discovered by science, and something done in a straight ahead, in a dramatic but not overly hyped or schlocky fashion. So hopefully it'll happen. And damn it, DB, you're the man to do it. I don't know.
No, I would be the man not to do it. Yeah. Hey, you know what we should do real fast, or actually we should take a lot of time doing this since it's a 90-minute show. But we need to talk about your 1992 experience. I know a lot of people will have heard of it, but there will be plenty of listeners who haven't. So let's go over that. Yeah, wow.
I always wish I could condense that story, but it always, if I try to condense it, it begs so many questions. So I'll do my best, folks, to condense this. First of all, let me say it's still the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. It was truly a bizarre series of events, and to this day, I still think the most plausible, probable explanation to what was encountered was a Sasquatch. Not just one, but two of them. And it all started, it was in September of 92. I had actually called the information booth in Willow Creek because I was interested at the time. I just had become aware of the notion of call blasting. And I was interested in that idea of getting some, mountain gorilla calls and purported Squatch screams and, going up in some of those areas. and hopefully getting a mule or a horse packer to take me into some areas, do some blasting, see what happens, right? So I call the information booth, and the lady, I told the lady I'm interested in a horse or a mule packer, and she didn't know of any. And then, as I usually am want to do, I usually ask locals, what do you think of the Bigfoot thing? Real, fake? What do you think? And she was very skeptical. She said, I've lived here all my life. I don't think much about it. But I know a lot of people around here really do. And then she said, well, it's really weird that you asked me that because I don't get a lot of Bigfoot questions. But just yesterday, this guy called me, really emotional, lives out on the coast near the mouth of the Klamath River, and said that day, I believe it had happened, his son and his son's friend had come running back to the house and said they had seen this approximately 6-foot-tall, light-colored, heavily muscled, man-like, gorilla-like being looking at them approximately 100 yards away at the edge of this dense forest. And so the lady had put, Daryl was his name, Daryl Owen, put him in touch with Al Hodgson, up there, and I'd met Al a few times, so I called Al, wanted to get his opinion if he thought it was maybe a hoax, and he said, no, this guy was really serious. I mean, he was really kind of shook up about the whole thing. So he gave me his number, I called him, and after talking to him for about a half hour, what I was convinced of was that the kids had, in all probability, had seen something big and alive they couldn't explain. So there, at that point, hadn't been any media contact. I had like a few days, nothing planned, so I picked a buddy of mine up and drove all the way from the Los Angeles area up there to go interview the kids. It seemed like possibly a pretty a good opportunity to do this because there really hadn't been any contact. It was just, and again, this is a great lesson, I think, to anybody out there listening, is that never be afraid to ask a question because you never know where it might lead you. If I did not ask that lady, what do you think of Bigfoot, it never would have led to what transpired over the next 3-4 weeks. So we get up there, we interview the kids separately to check the consistency of the stories, and they were both very believable in my opinion, very believable. They said they were looking for snakes in this dry creek bed. This is approximately a quarter mile away from the house. This little valley has about 50 houses spread out in it, and it's bracketed by these two very steeply sloped rows of hills that go back running west to east. And so the one kid, the 12-year-old, said he was looking for snakes, and he just looked up, and about 100 feet away from him was this pretty much fully exposed, like I said before, a light-colored, heavily muscled, man-like being, but not a man, just looking at him. The only motion they both described was a slight arm sway, very slight. Its arms were down around by its side. So the one kid saw it. He called. The other kid was still over, like about 40, 50 yards away. He called him over. He saw it. After approximately 10 seconds, they both kind of freaked out and started running back toward the house. If I recall correctly, they both said that as they ran, they kept an eye on it, and when they started to run, it turned and walked away clearly on two legs back into the denser vegetation there. So we went up to where they said this thing was standing, and there were some interesting indentations in the foliage there, but nothing definitive because it was like ivy, fern type stuff. But there were some kind of big footprint like things, but who knows. Mm-hmm. So as it turned out, I was going to be going back up in that area a few weeks later, so I kept in contact with the father about, because he had been pretty skeptical of this whole phenomena before his kid had come running back, white as a ghost, as he described it. So he started asking around locals, about stories, and he was getting some stories that, some of these things had apparently been seen in years past. And we decided a course of action to take was, it had happened, they had seen this thing at the base of the row of these hills that I mentioned, and it's a very steeply sloped hill in particular that has this huge, either Douglas fir or redwood at the top of it. It's this huge, gigantic tree. It used to be, it's called a I think it's called a spur tree. When they had logged the hill years before, and they would use that tree to lower the other trees down, and with rope. So when I got back up there in a few weeks, we went and we talked. He had found out who owned this property, because this property going back was private. And it was an older couple that had lived in the area for like 30, 35 years. And we just decided to be straight up and tell them what the kids had told us and wanted permission to go up this hill, because at the base of this hill there was intermittent barbed wire. That's what we first felt it was private, obviously. We didn't know how old this barbed wire was, or if it was still private or whatever. So then he found out who owned it. We went and talked to this lady. We didn't talk to the husband. He wasn't there. But we talked to the lady, and we told them the story. She said, oh, yeah, we know that, And it was just like this other layer of credibility just added to the story, just how matter of fact. She had said they hadn't seen them themselves, but friends of theirs who were either Hoopa or Yurok had a couple sightings over the years. So it didn't really shock them to think that there was something like that up in this area. And she said, yeah, it's fine. You can go up anytime you want. Just we would ask you don't bring a gun or don't bring a lot of people. You guys can go anytime. She's really nice lady. So I forgot exactly when it was, either later that day or the next day. But we started up this hill right about the area where they had last seen this thing disappear back into the dense foliage. And you get to that actual base of the hill, and it just goes like really steeply up. You can see it in the film, in my film Squatching, which it's not the whole film isn't about this, but the last part of it deals with it. Because I went back up the hill 10 years later with a Bigfooter back, a friend of mine, Chris Kraska, who lives back in Ohio. And it's just really steep and dense, a lot of ferns. So Daryl, again, this is in 92, we started up. I brought a video camera. I had a high 8 camera, and he actually had one of these old VHS cameras where you actually put the actual VHS tape in the side of the camera there, and this big behemoth. And we start up this gnarly hill, a lot of thistle, especially at the bottom, no discernible trails. You're just kind of scrambling your way up. And I remember thinking, and I believe Daryl had said the same thing later, that we weren't really seriously entertaining the notion that we were going to run into anything. If somebody told you they'd seen a bear at point A 3 weeks before, you may be on the lookout, but you're not really expecting to see the bear. So with that kind of attitude, I mean, it's a little creepy because we both found the kids. I mean, it's his son. He knows his son, and I found both the kids very credible. You're a little on edge, and you're heading up this hill, and our goal was to get to these series of logging roads that you could see near the crest of this row of hills, because we figured if there was something to the kid's story, maybe there was some footprint evidence up on the roads. So it takes us like an hour and a half, 2 hours to get up this damn hill. I mean, it was just like we'd go left, and it was too steep, and then we'd go right, and it was too dense. So it was a real trial and error experience, and we finally get to that tree I mentioned before. And at times it seemed like this hill, until we got to the tree, was at times like 30, 35 degrees. I mean, it was really, maybe even 40. I mean, it was so steep. And we're trudging along, getting up there. And then when we get to the tree, the hill leveled out quite a bit. Beyond the tree, I would say it got to roughly 10, maybe 15 degrees. Got 60 feet past this tree, and we're just getting ready to go into some really thick stuff. And we kind of have to go through it because it's just, there's no other option. If we're going to get to these roads, we got to go through this stuff. So just as we started to go into this, I noticed roughly 40 feet away through all this dense stuff, there was a darkness that was low down, part of which was a log that had fallen. But underneath it was kind of shadowed, so the darkness really stood out. And it just caught my eye, and I looked, and it was pretty apparent that there were these two pretty big brown eyes looking out of this darkness at me. Now, because it was low, I wasn't on immediate high Squatch alert. I just thought it was low, but then kept looking at these eyes. First, I was doubting, are those actually eyes? And then after about 30 seconds, they started swaying very, very slowly back and forth. So it was definitely an animal. I would say they were probably 3 inches apart, these eyes, and pretty big eyes. I started videotaping this. It's a bit of this video. It was, and we got interviewed on A&E's Ancient Mysteries about it, and a little bit of the videos in there. It's not really great video. I mean, I was looking at this thing for 10 minutes of videotaping. I remember it very vividly and how bizarre it was. And I was pretty convinced early, it wasn't a bear. It was just way too locked onto us with its eyes. I mean, it was just, a bear, in my opinion, would have been gone. This thing was kind of checking us out, and but very, almost hypnotically. I mean, its eyes were just so, fixed on us. But we weren't really freaked. We're just trying to figure out, because it's shadowed. All you can really see are the eyes, and then it looks like little bits of light are reflecting off a face, but it's back in the shadow, so you can't quite make it out what it is. So, and that's another reason I didn't think it was a bear, because I think a snout would have actually gone out into the sunlight.
Right.
So we're there and making little noises. I actually did say Soka Soka a couple times in reference to Albert Oss. I literally did say that. And, trying to get some reaction out of this other than this swaying. So we decided after 10 minutes, because we weren't feeling we weren't feeling threatened at that point, didn't feel weird. So let's just go toward it and see what happens. Maybe it'll move and we can see more of what it is. So we take 1, maybe 2 steps, and the eyes of this animal, starting at the dead center of the eye, coupled with what really appeared to be a dilation of the pupil, gave off this red glow, dude, that was really freaky. I mean, it was like, I've described it a couple ways. It was almost like, imagine 2 lit cigarettes behind the eyes and somebody's inhaling as the eyes dilate. I mean, it was like red. It was another way I've described it is it's like 60% of the intensity of an exit sign in a darkened movie theater. That's how red it was. This is like 2:30 in the afternoon, filtered sunlight coming down. So that stopped us because it was freaky. I mean, it was like, Christopher Lee in a Hammer film, vampire film from the 50s, that type of red. So what the hell? So after that happened, and immediately after I changed my underwear, the plausibility or probability that this might be one of our hairy friends increased for me because of all the accounts. People have reported, Native Americans, people who supposedly had close encounters report this bizarre red eye glow. So, here you have the sighting that happened a few weeks earlier at the base of the hill. Suddenly there's an animal giving off a very distinctive red eye glow, and I'm like, oh, God. I mean, before that happened, I was kind of thinking maybe this, but, was, but I didn't know. All you could see are these eyes, and it's swaying. It wasn't acting like a bear. It seemed too big to be anything else. So that stopped us in our tracks. I then thought, well, what if we separated? If I moved one way and Daryl went the other way, maybe instinctually whatever this thing was would think that we were trying to surround it, and as a result, maybe it would get up and leave, and when it did, one of us could videotape it. Well, I got about 10, 15 feet down to the right of Daryl. Apparently, I think, if I recall correctly, he tried to go left, and it was too dense to his left. So he actually was following me. I think he was a little freaked out. But as I got like 10, 15 feet away, I remember hearing Daryl just kind of go, and I look back, and he's taping, and he's freaking out. And he's like, okay, it's right there. Excuse me if I'm crying at this moment. And I see him taking his left finger, and he's like pointing. He's trying to point what he's seeing through the camera to anybody looking at this tape in the future, right? He's pointing. I can't see what he's seeing because it's so, the vegetation is so thick up there. You move 3 feet, you can't see what you were just seeing. It's very jungly. But it seemed pretty clear to me he was definitely having a strong reaction. What he was seeing, I don't know, but I'm trying to calm him down. He actually, on the original tape, you can actually hear me, take it easy, relax. So he tapes for about 30 seconds, and suddenly the camera goes limp in his hand, and he starts crying. very emotional, scared out of his wits, and he won't look back, like up the hill. He's like looking at me, and he's whispering. He's like, "It's right there, man. It's right friggin' there." And I'm like, I will not walk up to where he is because I don't know exactly how far it is. Whatever he's seeing, you know, I'm trying to contain my own fear because he is so scared. It's like pouring out of him. That's what it. I remember that's what it really felt like. That it was just like the emotion was so strong in what he was experiencing, and I was just trying to fight that off. We had no gun. We had no pepper spray, anything. So, you know, I figured based on the fact he was taping for about 30 seconds that he had got something. And, you know, discretion being a better part of valor, I figured we should get the hell out of here. So we start down the hill. We'd go a little way, stop, listen, didn't hear anything, stop, go a little farther, listen. Never heard anything come after us or anything like that. And obviously felt a lot better the farther we got down that hill. So obviously I was really anxious to look at the video, and he popped it in, and he rewound it, and he played it, and if I recall correctly, I was pretty close to the TV. And I'm just expecting, based on his reaction, just to see something blatantly standing there or laying there. I didn't quite, you know what to expect, but I didn't see anything initially. I'm going, there's like a lot of foreground and background foliage, you know, light reflecting off stuff, and I didn't notice anything. So I asked him to rewind it. He rewound it, and I stood back from the TV. And I remember being in their living room, looking at it, and just looking at the monitor and going, "Oh my God!" and looking away from the TV and telling myself, "Be objective, because I was pretty startled by what I was looking at. About 30 feet back from them, approximating, sticking out of the side of this, what I think turned out to be a rhododendron bush, pretty thick bush. Sticking out is what appears to be this huge Schwarzeneggian mountain gorillian upper arm, whitish, grayish, same basic color the kids reported a few weeks earlier. You know, and you know how a gorilla has that bulging deltoid muscle, like just down off their shoulder, really that it was bulging out and then kind of hourglassing down to a biceps and a tricep, and then apparently, if in fact this is an arm, and I'm still convinced that's what it was, where the elbow is, it bends, and then you can't see any of the forearm because it's hid by the bush. This thing is sticking out of the side of a bush, and it's there the whole time he was taping. And it's obviously not a tree because a tree doesn't grow, 3 feet, 4 feet off the ground and then stop. It's probably, I'll take a guess. I would guess that this arm was at least 7-8 inches across, where the bicep was, at least. So I remember thinking, okay, well, let's test this theory. If that's what that is, then however obscured, there should be something at a 45-degree angle up and to the left off this purported shoulder that should look like a head. And lo and behold, you go up from that tip of that purported shoulder, and there is this roundish, same color as the arm, very smooth dome. It's not particularly pointy, almost like baldy looking. But where a face would be, it's dark, and what appears to be like a protruding brow ridge. And it's contiguous with that upper arm. Now, in between the upper arm and the head, you can't see because the brush is all there. But that head, or, theoretical head, is about 6 feet off the ground. And so we looked at it again. This time I'm looking for motion. And twice within that 29 seconds, that head clearly moves by itself. It tilts out twice. It looks and then goes back kind of this ninja pose and then leans out a little further. And that's when Daryl really freaks out. It's like, I honestly do believe it was a Sasquatch. And I think I can understand Daryl's emotional response, because imagine if you were out there filming and you're pretty sure you're filming a Sasquatch. It's only 30 feet from you. It's frozen, but it's looking right at you, and then it peers at you. It tilts its head out and gets a closer look. I think that was part of what was freaking him out, and, I completely understand. So the next day, we go back up. We went with 2 other people. Where the eyes were, because obviously there was nothing there. but about 30 feet behind where the shoulder and head were, through some really thick stuff. Like we had to crawl on our hands and knees to get through all this stuff. All of a sudden, we part this vegetation, and there before us was this about 25-foot long, 15-foot wide nest. Clearly, some animal, some being, don't know what. I mean, I've got my hunches, but it was clearly a nest of some type. You crawled into it. It had all been matted down, and it reminded me a lot of a gorilla nest. You know, having watched National Geographic specials over the years, it really looked like that. And it was right near the top of this hill, which is where mountain gorillas will make their nests. So when we got into it, and you sat there, and again, it's about I would say, roughly 10-degree slope. Right at the base of that little nest, there was what appeared to be kind of a circle in the vegetation. What I surmised, it looked like something or things had been crawling in and out of, creating this kind of like tunnel. If you went right through that from where we were sitting, just slightly down to the right, you'd be where those eyes were the day before. And if you went slightly to the left out of it, you'd be where the head and shoulder was. Mm-hmm. We went up closely to where the eyes were the day before. In my opinion, it was too small of an area, getting a closer look at it, to accommodate what Daryl got on camera with the shoulder and the head, which leads me to believe why I said before I thought there were two. I think there was a small one. I think we went up this hill that probably no human had been up in God knows how long. They'd been there for a while. The kids had the big one, or one of the big ones, had come down, checked out the kids playing in the dry creek bed. They were still there when we went back a few weeks later, and a little one came out and was investigating us. Was hiding pretty well, but we caught a glimpse of it. And then back 30 feet beyond, again, this is extremely thick vegetation at the time. Mom, Dad, or Big Brother is being like a good big mammal and keeping an eye on us. And then when we made that potentially threatening move of separation, me going down to the right, Daryl trying to go left, but eventually going to the right with me, like any good mammal, when we made this potentially threatening maneuver, it tried to get in between us and the small one. That's what I think probably happened. There was some hair we did find up there. Daryl gave it to a guy named Sterling Bunell, who I found out later does in fact exist and was in the Bay Area and had some type of primatological experience. I don't know how valid he is or how valid it was. Apparently a morphological study, not any kind of DNA look-see. But his opinion, which they showed and used in the A&E show, was that he felt that they were very similar to chimpanzee and mountain gorilla samples he had. But in his opinion, again, and how valid his opinion is, I don't know. But he felt they were similar to the mountain gorilla and the chimpanzee hairs, but distinguishable. So he thought they were like them, but they weren't them. So when you take everything together, the kid's sighting, me actually with my own eyes seeing an animal's eyes glow red and watching it sway slowly for 10 minutes, watching Daryl shoot this video, and pretty immediately afterwards watching it and seeing the shoulder and the head, and I still haven't come up with a reasonable explanation that counters that. Finding the nest, the hair samples, when you take it all together, that's why I say I think in all probability, strong probability in my opinion, that there were a couple of Sasquatch there that day. Do I know absolutely? No. But it still seems like the most reasonable explanation. And I've pondered many a time about possibly being hoaxed. And that just seems so unlike, not that I can't be fooled. Lord knows we all can be fooled, but Daryl didn't lead the way up the hill most of the time. As I recall correctly, if I'm recalling correctly, I did. And especially near the end, he didn't really, it was my idea about the tree, it wasn't his and all that. And then plus someone suggested that, well, what if there was a guy waiting up there, and this is way up the tree. I mean, there's really no back way to get in up there either, which makes it really kind of a hard to believe notion. But if there, let's say theoretically, a guy was in a suit up there, there is, in my opinion, no way an animal that was pretty big, the eyes, the glowing eyes. There's no way an animal that big would have stuck around while a guy sitting up there in some kind of big muscle suit was waiting to try to pull a prank. That makes no sense to me. So again, that's why I go back to the position that I think that's what happened. And there, how long did that take? Was that like an hour and a half? Me yakking, or are you still there?
Not quite. Yes.
Did you go make a sandwich during that? So
I did
anyway,
yeah.
I'm sure you've heard it before, so I don't fault you.
No, well, I like listening to your story, and one of the reasons I like listening to it is because of the way that you're consistently very detailed, and your details always match. So you're a very credible witness. And what excites me is that you're a very credible witness, and you witnessed the eye shine thing, which I've never seen. And I have other researchers that I talk to, and they've never seen it either, and we all find that very hard to believe.
I know.
But
I mean, again, can I say that what animal I saw was a Bigfoot? No, because all I saw were the eyes in the front of. But I definitely saw red eye glow, and I don't know of any other. And then when you couple that with the few minutes later with the shoulder and the head and the whole nest thing, that again, it seems unlikely that another type of like animal was there, if a Bigfoot or if a guy in a suit was there. So it just the other scenarios don't really seem to add up for me. But it was freaky, man. It was genuinely freaky when that happened, and it. I'm not one to attribute paranormal aspects of this phenomenon. I think it's merely an unclassified type of being. But when that happened, believe me, that possibility ran through my mind. It was so weird. I don't know. It's one of those things that I'm sure you do have. You have those days where you doubt the whole phenomena, right? You'll think, okay, could this just be an ancient memory that we all, maybe our ancestors encountered things like this, and we carry around these myths. And then I remember, I go, no, gosh damn, the thing that happened to me on the hill, man, that doesn't fit that theory. I mean, I really can't come up with another rational explanation. I mean, and then you couple that with that's, a fairly historically rich area of sightings. And so it just is maddening at times. In fact, I just finished. I really recommend this book, by the way. It's a really good book. Even though the guy is a skeptic on the phenomena, it's a really good history of the notion of the idea, the icon, if you will, of Sasquatch in American and world culture. It's the new book by his name is Joshua Blues, Buhs. And he says right up front that he's skeptical of it, but but he does a really good job of detailing how Bigfoot, whether real or imagined, has become through mass media, through consumerism, through films, has become this solidified mythological construct. And boy, there were times during the book. I mean, he had me going, like, God, maybe this is all. But then I remember, wait a minute, what the hell happened to you on the hill then? And I'm like, and still not just that, but also the fact. I mean, I'm still swayed by the argument. I think Green was probably the first to put it in print. But so you're telling me every single one of these reports that are literally numbered in the thousands, every one is a misperception, a hallucination, or a hoax, and that if only one of those isn't one of those three, then there's something to this phenomena. I find that easier to believe than to think it's all hooey. And believe me, I think there's a lot of hooey in this phenomena. There has been, since the advent of the internet and paid-for expeditions and whatnot, there's been a lot of wishful thinking and people getting in the woods with a bunch of people who believe, and then they hear something and they think somebody's throwing rocks at them, and it's ridiculous how much stuff that goes on, I think. That would probably have another explanation to it, but it certainly makes it a more interesting hobby, contemplating it, and so I guess until when or if a body is ever found, I suppose it always will be.
Yeah, and that problem that we have, the fact that we've not been able to turn up any remains that we know of anyway.
Right, exactly.
Remains that's rotting in a museum and nobody knows what it is, and they didn't take it seriously or whatever. But anyway, we don't currently have anything we can put our hands on. That seems to me to be a real problem. I don't know how we get past that because, for one thing, to be that knocks out that it's just a dumb ape. In order to keep hidden like that, they've got to have intelligence. They've got to be smarter than a dumb ape.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, that argument actually doesn't affect me as much because if you look at the history of discovery of higher primates, it's always been a slow process. I mean, look at the mountain gorilla. Hundreds of years of speculation. Are there man-like beings who live in the volcanic regions of Rwanda? I mean, this wasn't something that we just happened to find this guy shot this. These were stories. Anecdotal evidence was out there for a long time before. Orangutans, the wild men of Borneo, that's what they were called. No, it's just myth. So if in fact Sasquatch exists, it would, I think, pretty clearly fall into that category. A, there's not a lot of them relative to other life forms. I think it's typical with higher primates. It's not like each little social group needs a lot of area, for whatever reason, for feeding and for mating purposes. But it doesn't really surprise me. In fact, I remember thinking a few years ago when this could go on actually for a long time without there being proof. It would not surprise me. And then you add the other potential element that George Schaller, guy who's the head of the World Wildlife Fund, primatologist, he witnessed in the mid-'60s. He saw it was either one or two gorillas putting vegetation on a dead gorilla, covering, in a sense, burying. So is it that much of a leap to think that these things wouldn't do that? Not a lot of them. Maybe they eat their dead. Who knows? It just isn't. I mean, we're talking about something that if it's there, it's clearly its brain size is substantially bigger than a bear's or really any other known animal out there. So, I think that there would, plus you add the other potential element that, there are those who think that maybe our ancestors, Homo erectus, maybe hunted these things or their relatives thousands and thousands of years ago. And when that happens, when you have that adversarial relationship between two life forms, you have, genetic memory builds up for that one life form to innately fear that other life form.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got to
avoid it at all costs,
Yeah, exactly. It's like they don't know why. They just, stay away from that. I don't know why. Jim, maybe they call each other Jim and Steve, the Sasquatch. Just don't go near them. I don't know. Don't trust them. So if you have that as well, small numbers, not nocturnal, it's not that bizarre that we haven't found them yet. I think. I mean, it is a little weird. As you probably know, I'm not a big. I don't have a lot of faith in a lot of the more famous bits of evidence. I am skeptical of the Patterson film, as odd as that may sound to some people. Not absolutely convinced, but pretty strongly leaning toward thinking it's a hoax. Skookum cast, I think it's probably an elk. Memorial Day footage, that's actually in the category of a joke to me. That it's laughable that film is considered a Bigfoot. It's so, you look at it, it's just, it's a ghillie suit, dude. Then there's a guy sitting over there. Another, have you seen that whole footage where there's the guy over to the right? Of course, that doesn't get into the, the legend meets science shows. But there's a guy over there to the right who has a paintball mask up already that's in that raw footage. But of course, that doesn't get in. So there's this thing running from left to right over in the same general direction where a guy is standing in a paintball outfit. It's that to me, that Memorial Day footage is an example, in my opinion, of footage that's it is a bona fide mystery, this phenomena, but we get desperate for stuff, so we just start looking really hard so we start,
right.
You know what I mean? Just giving it more value than it actually has.
So that would be one of those examples of wishful thinking. I mean, it's not
Absolutely.
that guy had decided, I'm going to make those people think I'm a Bigfoot.
No, exactly.
But after the film is taken, people say, hey, that looks like a Bigfoot.
Yeah. So therefore,
that
gives it more credence. No, it's like it should be the film itself. Speaking of which, also the tape that was shot when I was up on the hill, Daryl shot, I think scientifically is worthless. It's completely worthless. You're not going to glean anything from it. That's what I think actually happened, actually being there. But I don't expect anybody to look at that in any pure scientific way and somehow rule out the possibility there's a guy back there. You just can't.
Yeah.
The Patterson film is more interesting because you have a full-bodied figure there, and there's more stuff to analyze. It's on screen a long time. I do still think it's probably a hoax, but it has so many interesting elements to it besides the film itself and the trouble with the development, which is probably the biggest problem for me. The whole development of the film is really fishy. But anyway, it just, again, makes it a really interesting phenomena.
Well, let me get some callers real quick, and then I will come back to the development of the film because I think a lot of listeners haven't heard of that. So if I forget it, maybe you can bring it up again. I'll write it down right here.
Sure.
But let me get some callers in real fast. First, I think we're bringing JC back up on the line because he had disappeared. Let's see if this is JC here. Okay, 757, you're on the air.
Hey, is Scott done telling his story?
Yeah.
Yes,
he's
he's done. Yeah, that's actually JC. JC, I'm going to come back to you in just a second to find out if we have any questions, but first I want to get the other caller who's been very patient. So this is a caller in the 541 area code. Okay. Let's see. Let me press this button again. Okay, 541, you're on the air.
Hey there, this is the Wampus Wrangler out of the Willamette Valley. How you doing?
Great.
Good. How you doing?
Good. Hey, Scott. Nice to finally talk to you. I've been downloading that speech for quite a while. It is right on key with all the rest of them that I heard. What I would like to hear, though, and maybe in the future broadcast that you go through, you could have the other researcher on there. I'd love to hear his testimony as it relates to there. Are there any downloads with his point of view?
You mean the guy who was with me on the hill?
Yeah.
Yeah, Daryl, well, shortly after this happened, Daryl, in my opinion, really got freaked out by what happened. I mean, and he also got very obsessed to the point that, at least what he told me, that his wife left him. I mean, this was like a major thing for him. And after him and his wife split up, he moved to Montana. And then, every once in a while I'll hear from him. He'll send me an email. How you doing, man? Wasn't that weird what happened to you? It was. Yeah, it's still bizarre, and I still think that's what happened. You give it some time and you reflect back, and it's, more than ever, that's what I'm convinced happened. I know he said he kind of because I think he got so obsessed with it, he wanted to get away from it. So I don't know. I feel he'll probably, emerge somewhere someday. Maybe he's listening to this now, and yeah, Daryl, we could reflect back on it. But I just don't have enough constant contact with him. And again, the last he ever expressed about it, he wasn't really he said his piece with it, and that seemed to be enough for him.
Yeah, I mean, listening to what you've gone through, I think you've got a bad rap just because you've kind of taken on the Jimmy Dean and the Shroud of Turin of Sasquatch lore, and that'd be Bob Gimlin and the Patty film.
Yeah.
Although, you just have to, unless you experience these kind of unexplained events in your own life, it's really hard to relate to others that haven't. You kind of become your own lie detector. So someone like Daryl, I can sympathize to a certain degree over what he's going through, although I've never come face-to-face with a Sasquatch yet, but I would love to hear his testimony on there, and I think it would just really add something to your own story.
Yeah. Who knows? He may get back involved with this. I just know that back then he was just like he had enough, and so we'll see what happens. Hey, also in reference to something you mentioned, I just want to be clear about something about that. Yes, I am skeptical of the Patterson film, and for what got blown out of proportion, I think, with this whole Yakima Roundup, which I don't really want to go into too much, but some people were under the impression that I was calling Bob Gimlin a liar, and I had never said that. I've certainly speculated on it, and it's certainly a possibility. If you're looking at it scientifically, which I try to do, you can't rule any explanation out. But part of why I'm only at 85% skeptical on the Patterson film, what keeps me from 90 or 95 is that Gimlin is really believable. I've been the first to say that. I find him very credible. Now, that doesn't mean he isn't lying. I mean, and again, I'm not saying that to say it suggests he is necessarily, but, I mean, if he came off kind of like, story changed, or I would be even more skeptical, but it's one of the reasons that I'm not fully skeptical. And I still, however improbable that it may be, I still feel it's possible that Gimlin got duped. I know it seems to me if it was a hoax, it is more probable that Gimlin was in on it. But I still am not absolutely convinced that it could have been a hoax and Gimlin was duped. I still think that is a possibility, however potentially remote.
Yeah, us as hikers that happen to be looking for Bigfoot, I just think we need to be careful of lifting these little moments up, like the Patterson moment, the Patty footage, because they, if that's what we're relying on, is this footage behind a computer screen to be the answer for what's going on in the woods, it not only limits, what's possible when we should be outside doing our own little bits and pieces of research, but it's an unfair place for Bob Gimlin to sit when he could have had that whole day been avoided if he would have taken a left instead of a right.
Yeah, and I think anybody who bases their whole faith in that there are Sasquatch solely on the Patterson film, I don't think that's really very logical thinking. I mean, I believe regardless whether it is or not. I mean, not just based on what happened to me, but just, again, to me, the sheer volume of the stories impresses me. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. It sure makes an interesting hobby. It seems to me it's a bona fide mystery that who knows? It could end tomorrow. I mean, there could be a body found, or
Right. Well, thanks for
your
time, man.
Hey, well, thank you, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, JC, do we have any callers? I mean, any questions from the chat room?
Yes, I have a couple questions here.
Let's go.
Jordan Warner wants to know what is Scott's opinion of the Ohio Howl, and have you heard it? I don't know if there's, I know I have heard a Ohio Howl. I don't know if it's the Ohio Howl or there are several Ohio Howls, but an Ohio Howl, say that 8 times fast, an Ohio Howl that I've heard, to me sounds a lot like a barred owl. I haven't, a lot of sounds to me haven't really impressed me all that much. It's just so much in the woods can reverberate in strange ways depending on the the atmospherics, the terrain. It does make sense that if these creatures live, that I would think that there would almost have to be some type of vocalization. I mean, every other, if I'm correct in this, and I think I am, all other primates have some type of vocalization, so therefore it seems logical to surmise that so would a Sasquatch. But the one that always freaked me out, although there was some research to indicate perhaps that it was actually a coyote, which freaked me out, with the Puyallup screams, which there had been some research to indicate that maybe that was it. So I don't know. The things that have impressed me the most have been actually talking to people directly who seem incredibly credible. Those are the things that really, like, there was this couple, their name evades me. I met at a conference back in Pennsylvania a few years ago, and they told a story, and this was either had to be a stone cold lie or it happened. I mean, there was clearly, because it was so close, it was literally within a few feet of them that this thing supposedly was standing, and it was more like a Neanderthal type of being, according to the story. And I'll tell you, those people seemed so credible. I mean, I didn't get a whiff of BS. I talked to them a little bit. It's one thing I like to do is to talk about other things with those people and see if they have a tendency to exaggerate or if they seem down to earth. And they just seemed very average, normal, logical people. But this story about that they'd seen one that they were standing within a few feet of, I found really, really compelling. That's the stuff that just, solidifies my belief.
Cool. We got any other questions there, JC?
Yeah, I got one from Andy Drew, and he wants to know if George Lucas made a Bigfoot film, how do you think it would turn out?
It would, well, first of all, there'd probably be way too much technology used. I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, he really, with Chewbacca, really helped, bring more the kind of the Sasquatch, the hairy man motif to a popular level there in the 70s. I don't know. It would just depend how knowledgeable he is about it. And I don't know how knowledgeable he is about it. I think for there to be a really good film, you'd have to someone who really cares about the phenomena and is well aware of both the pro and con arguments, anthropologically, mythologically, sociologically, the whole thing. Somebody who has a rich understanding of the phenomena, and like I said, someone who really cares. And I think the more someone was like that, the probability that it would be a pretty good film would occur. So I don't know, but I'm sure somehow George would probably work a robot in there, which would ruin the film.
Yeah, it would probably be a very successful film, but wouldn't really be very good. George kind of became Darth Vader, didn't he? I mean, he really kind of, not in an overtly evil way, but in a like the new Star Wars are so, they're dazzling to the eye, but where the heart died, like he got so into that. The dialogue is awful. The dialogue is terrible. The guy cannot write dialogue. The only movie that actually has some decent dialogue is the one that they didn't let him direct, and that was Empire Strikes Back. I think they must have polished the dialogue.
Yeah, that I think is the best Star Wars film. It just has a lot of, the whole stuff with Yoda's great, and I agree. He's not a super gifted screenwriter, but
he did come up with a really good idea, though. The big ideas he can do. I think he should farm out the execution to some other people, though. But how did we get on George Lucas? We're talking Bigfoot. I don't know.
You have an hour and a half show. It's called padding.
Yeah, we padded a little bit. JC, have we got any more questions there?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a Blog Talk Bigfoot show without Bill Green asking, are you currently investigating any footprints or sightings in your area?
Well, I live 25 miles north of San Diego on the coast. The only footprints I saw today were walking on the beach, and they appeared human. But they are crafty, these Sasquatch, so I don't know. No, I really, it's almost, kind of back to what I was saying about the advent of the Internet, which in one sense is good and more people are interested in the phenomena, but there's just an exponential rise in the amount of BS. It's like, how do you separate the wheat from the chaff? I mean, there's so much, and there's so many people, investigating stuff, and so I really haven't. It's hard to. I mean, like the thing that happened to me in '92 was very fortuitous. It was just one of those things where I'd asked this lady if she believed in Bigfoot, and she said no, but a lot of people around here do. In fact, it's weird you asked me. A guy called here yesterday, said his son had just seen one. So see, like if that had happened today, he probably would have gone online, and then you'd have a group of people, way too many people going to investigate. That's a key too. I think it reminds me of the Yeti searches when they were looking in the 50s. Is that these parties are like over 100 people. Well, do you really think you're going to get close with 100 people? All these Sherpas, lugging stuff. I think the less amount of people involved, the better. And obviously, the closer to the time it happened, the better. So, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I answered Bill's question, but I'm sure he'll ask the exact same question on the next show I go on.
Yeah, that's his favorite question. It will be asked again. You can be sure of that. And you know what I've been forgetting to do is give the call-in number. Yeah, I mean, especially if you're onto something right now, then it's a good pertinent question.
Yeah.
But when you're not, yeah. But we haven't given out the guest call-in number, so let me do that real fast. It's 347-237-5070. That's 347-237-5070. Go ahead and dial that number up if you'd like to talk to Scott Herriot. JC, do we have any more questions that you have from the chat?
No, not right now. We don't.
Okay. Well, what we're going to do is briefly take a little commercial break. And when we come back, we will pick back up again, and I guess it will talk about, if we don't have any other callers or anything, we'll talk about that the developing of the Patterson-Gimlin film and the problems with that. But that's what we'll talk about when we come back.
Okay.
So everybody hold on to your hats. As soon as I find the right button to push, we'll start to hear commercials.
Sasquatch Watch Radio. Stay tuned.
My name's Rachel, and I'm 10 years old. I like riding my bike, playing soccer, and in 8 years, I'll be an alcoholic. I'll start drinking in middle school, just at parties. My friends will drink, so I will too.
Kids who drink before age 15 are 5 times more likely to have alcohol problems when they're adults.
My parents won't really know what's going on yet. I mean, I'll do okay in school, but when I drink, I'll do some things I don't really want to do. So by the time my parents talk to me about it, alcohol won't be my only problem.
Alcohol affects their judgment and their future. So start talking before they start drinking.
My parents won't believe it could happen to me.
For more information on teens and alcohol, and to learn what you can do, visit the web at stopalcoholabuse.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Ad Council, and this station.
Are you tired of the same old boring radio? Looking for something with a bit of an edge? Then sit down, strap in, and hold on tight, for you're about to be taken beyond the edge.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Let's get ready to rumble!
It's Down and Dirty Paranormal Talk Radio that takes you beyond the edge. Join us here on Blog Talk Radio Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern for Beyond the Edge Radio, as we interview the everyday investigator to the seasoned researcher. From ghosts and hauntings, demonology, UFO and alien life forms, cryptozoology, psychic phenomenon, and other mysteries and unusual anomalies. Paranormal Talk Radio that goes beyond the edge, and it's right here every Friday night at 9 as we take you from the boring everyday normal into the world of the paranormal. Think you're brave enough? Then lock your doors, open your minds, and join us if you dare. Beyond the Edge Radio, Friday nights 9 p.m. Eastern, only on Blog Talk Radio. Beyond the Edge Radio is an anomalous entertainment production. Check us out at beyondtheedgeradio.com.
All right, we are back from our little break here, and we're talking to Scott Herriot tonight. And Scott, before we go on to the development problem, JC, did we get any other questions in chat while we were in commercial?
Yes, I have a question from Andy. He wanted to know if Scott was unbelievably rich, what would he do to research Bigfoot?
Wow, that's a good question. You know, I'm sure others listening here have probably pondered that as well. If like money was no limit, or there was no, what am I trying to say? Yeah, you had unlimited amounts of money. Excuse me, I need more coffee. Yeah, what would you do? I think something along the lines of a boatload of remote cameras. I mean, like hundreds in a relatively small zone that has apparently some historically rich sightings, and then some kind of central area where, I mean, almost like a mobile van that's somehow, once something was triggered, you would be able to see what triggered the camera, and getting people to that area as quickly as possible. Now, once they got there, I don't know. I mean, I'm against killing these things. I'm against any kind of permanent capture. If I felt convinced that if you could get some type of tracking device in it somehow, maybe even something that you could it could swallow or something like that. But again, if you don't know the specific physiology of an animal, and you try to, tranquilize it, it could enrage it, or, it could kill it. So if there's something, you could, something that would stick into it, that would then keep some kind of tracking device. I don't know how that would be possible with an animal like this, because apparently it looks as though they would be able to reach every part of their body, with their arms and whatever. Another one could pick something out. But, short of that, I don't know. It's I think that's the way to go. Is an area and I actually think it would be more advantageous in a private property area that maybe has an area of credible sightings. Because I think that these things are smart enough to know zones that we don't go into very often, that they know that barbed wire fence indicates something that on this side, either with scent or lack of evidence that we're on that one side of the fence, they would maybe be apt to stay on that side of the fence in this relative safe zone. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Mm-hmm. So concentrating, I just think you have to go for something like no more than a 20 square mile area at the most, because other than that, you're just, it gets so vast. Even small, probably 10 square mile area would be even better, that had a history of what you would consider to be pretty strong sightings. So, yeah, and then just drop a bomb, a small atomic device. And
that would take care of the problem.
Yeah. You may never find a body, but you'll know that
you know what I would like to do if money was no object. I would like to have a satellite that had all these high resolution capabilities that that the government, the Defense Department have. Of course, it wouldn't just be money that would be a bar to that. It would be they won't let you have it. That would be a bar to that. But if we could get something like that, it would seem like you could focus it on places where same thing. You think there's a good chance there are Bigfoot there, and see if you can catch something from the satellite that would. I don't think you could ever prove Bigfoot existed with the satellite. Now that I think about it, because it's always top down, what have you. But at least you get some information out of it.
And then you've got the other problem of that it just, satellite imagery will not penetrate any foliage covering the ground. And I would think these things would be more likely to be in areas where there is some cover. Not that they're, thinking they're getting viewed by satellites, but just it's denser vegetation. To me, it makes tremendous sense that these things would live in dense vegetation for comfort, for more food, for hiding.
Right.
So unless they can develop, the only that I'm aware of, the only technology is like X-ray technology. We'll look through that stuff, but you can't blast X-rays from space, as far as I know. And if you did, you could probably kill anything if you exposed it too long. But if they ever develop something that could look through vegetation that wasn't harmful and could be done at a low altitude, even with one of these kind of dirigible devices that are pretty maneuverable now, that would be really cool.
Yeah, there's a listener to the show goes by the name of Kite Squatch, who actually likes to develop applications for kites. And one thing he's interested in trying to do is to use a kite as a surveillance instrument. But see, you would need that bomb you're talking about, but instead of a nuclear bomb, you need a bomb full of napalm, to defoliate the trees, and then we maybe get something. Well, before we run out of time, tell some of the listeners who wouldn't know what this is all about what that development issue is with the Patterson-Gimlin film, because it is a really interesting part of the history of the Patterson-Gimlin film. Yeah,
it is. And again, my details may be a little sketchy, but at least the basic argument is that you've got you don't have an answer yet to the dilemma that I believe it was a Friday, if I'm remembering correctly, that they said they shot the film, that they came back into, they said they went down, dropped the film off to be the Diatley, that's Patterson's brother-in-law, and then had the film flown out up to Washington. Then they came back ultimately to Willow Creek that night, talked to Al Hodgson, and then on Sunday, that's like 2 days later, had this screening up in Yakima. Or I believe it was 2 days, maybe 3 days. And when anybody who's investigated it has never been able to find the developer, and when they, as far as flights going out of Arcata, they didn't have any flights, or in other words, every avenue of investigation has not come up with something that fits their story. In other words, either flights that went or a developer that developed that type of film. Mm-hmm. And it's a big problem. It just seems like a lot went on to be able to get it done in that time. And, I mean, if it's a fake, I think it's definitely possible what could have happened is that they filmed this as a dramatization because Patterson was filming a documentary at the time. There's no doubt he was doing it. That's what they said they were doing. They had the camera out there and, they're getting all this B-roll shot and maybe we'll do this as a dramatization. Well, they shoot it, and there are some who speculate that it was maybe shot like a week earlier. Then they looked at the film and said, I think we could get away with this. And then concocted the whole story, went and made the prints somehow. And again, I lean toward if it's a hoax that those prints probably had to be faked, not with the guy in the costume. How they're done, I don't know. I don't think it's impossible. Some people argue, it's impossible. You couldn't with the mid-tarsal break, and it's like, yeah, right, whatever. How about stamping a foot that had the same basic bottom? And I mean, has experimentation been done with that? I want to see that. I also don't rule out the possibility that a guy in a costume could have made it, but I currently think it seems improbable. So that's basically it. It's that the avenues that they said how it was done, no one's been able to find either a plane company that did it or a developer that would have done that type of film. It's a problem. It's a genuine problem. And then you couple that with a lot of shady stuff that Patterson did. Some people don't want to take that into account at all, and I think that's wrong. I mean, the most important thing I do agree with, though, and most believers believe this, is the film itself. That is the most important piece of evidence. And I'll be the first to agree there's aspects of the film subject that look really good if it's a Bigfoot. The head and the back. But to me, there is a big problem in the film. Personally, I think that what's been referred to as the hip waiter argument. I don't know if it's actually a hip waiter, if it's a suit. But if you watch the film, just below the right hip, when the film subject walks, it really looks like a crease to me. It looks like an indentation of fabric and not something that would occur on an animal's skin, but is consistent with like a suit. Now, and another little thing that always throws another wrench into this whole thing, it is, though, right where the hand goes by the hip, and so the counter argument to that is, well, that's just, Patty grazing her fur. But when you really watch it, it doesn't look like a fur. To me, it doesn't anyway, and to others that I've talked to, and not so much believers, I think, but it really looks like an indentation of fabric, not like the finger would cause that big of an indentation. So, but back on the other side of the coin, the legs look really good. I mean, they look, like the calf. That's a good fake calf, man, if it's a fake calf. Mm-hmm. It's not, cheesy, and I think it is a big assumption, though, for those who do believe in the film when they say, well, the footprints, though, match. Even though there's been, pretty good analysis when it shows the film subject's foot up in the air and you compare that to the cast they made, yes, it is a close match, but that doesn't mean that the film subject made the impressions in the sand. There is no direct evidence of that. That's an assumption people make because, well, they came back with these footprints, so therefore, and the subject did walk across, so therefore it must have made him. No, it's not witnessed. I mean, Meldrum has even said he thinks he sees one, but that's Jeff Meldrum. So it's such a great mystery. It's a fascinating mystery, and I think anybody who makes a bold claim on either side, I mean, an absolute, well, I know it's a fake. Well, usually people who say that are starting from the premise there can't possibly be something like a Bigfoot, therefore it has to be a fake, and that's anything but scientific. And then you have somebody who goes, I'm 99% sure that it's real. I suggest that you read The Making of Bigfoot, as flawed as that book is, and it is flawed. And I myself have had run-ins with Greg Long, the author. He didn't believe I was a Bigfoot believer. He thought I was trying to set him up for something, and I called him, and I was actually researching his book because I'd done these stories for CNN. He thought I made that up, and he told people. Well, this Bigfoot believer called me up and said he was working for CNN. Then I sent him the transcripts of the story they'd done for CNN. Of course, he never got back to me. So here's a guy who has done me harm.
Right.
But I say this. Read Greg Long's book. If half of what is in that book is true, and you don't come away thinking that you should have some serious doubts about that film, then I think you're suffering from some really severe bias of the film, that you really want it to be real. Because, nobody else had really done as much, even to this day, has not done as much interviewing of people who knew Patterson. And he finds a lot of stuff that the guy was shady. He had a shady aspect to him, He ripped people off, pretty clear on that, and was pretty inventive. I think he definitely believed in Bigfoot, but he was almost the perfect kind of guy to do something like this. He was always looking for that quick scheme, and he was just the type of guy who would try to do something like this, and I tend to believe he did. Mm-hmm. So now, then again, just to we've got a few minutes here, but you've got Hieronymus, who, if you take the totality, Bob Hieronymus is the guy who nobody disputes. He knows those guys. There's photos of them back and was involved in the making of his documentary, and who, in my opinion, his body fits really well with Patty. I mean, if you look, the basic frame of Bob Hieronymus fits. So he says, I was the guy in the suit. But if you look at everything he said on it, there's a lot of contradictions. Now, does that mean he's a BSer, or does that mean he's because he's 70-some years old and he can't remember the details, or doesn't care about the details, but he does know that he was the guy who was in the suit, or was he in another suit for some, who knows? But the point is, he has been willing to and has passed 2 lie detector tests, one of which was on national TV, that I saw the episode, and the guy who administered it to him said it was a really high rating, truth telling. Mm-hmm. Bob Gimlin will not take a lie detector test, or hasn't. That doesn't mean he's lying, but I think, I don't know. There's again, it goes back. Again, Gimlin seems genuine. He, maybe he was duped. Maybe, I don't know. It just goes round and round with this story. It's what makes it so fascinating for me, and hopefully for others who aren't painfully sitting there going, God, will he shut up about the Patterson film?
I'm sure there are a few. Hey, you know what? We've got a caller. Maybe this caller will say that. Let's find out. Hold on a second.
Oh, no. Uh-oh.
Let's see if I can get the button to work. Okay, caller in the 936 area code. You're on the air.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was just going to ask Scott what he thought about a Diane Fossey or Jane Goodall approach to researching these hairy folks, as I call them.
Yeah.
I mean, Diane Fossey put herself out there and let them get used to her, and they finally accepted her before she was able to do real research on gorillas.
Right.
And this is true for any primate across the planet, from the smallest ones with tail to the ones that the Indians that were discovered in the Amazon last year that still live in the wild.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I guess but of course you got to find the Sasquatch to begin with, I think yes, I think it makes sense. It's worked before. I think when you don't have that much testosterone present, I think these animals would be very, very hyper aware of that stuff. Another male primate, they would potentially see that as a threat, whereas a woman wouldn't be as a threat. They would feel more comfortable. And I think, like you alluded to, Fossey and Jane Goodall, their research has proven that. So, who knows? Maybe there's somebody right now doing that who saw one and is trying to do some kind of habituation. That doesn't surprise me at all if that has in fact happened. I know the book The Locals. I haven't read it, but
the person that comes to mind for me is in the chat room, and his name is Hiker11. His name is Randy. He's in Canada. He's been going into the same area in Canada for 40 years. And so they're acclimated to him, and he gets footprint photographs and casts. He gets pictures of them. He has stuff thrown at him at times. It doesn't hit him, but it lands near him to let him know that they're in the area.
Right.
So they're used to him. And there's plenty of people who are doing the same thing, but there's no serious groups like a Jane Goodall or Diane Fossey that are willing to go in and spend day after day in the same area.
Yeah, I guess that, you have to let them get used to you is what I would imagine, since it works the same way with all of the primates on the planet. It has to be their choice, not yours.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think kind of alluding back to what had happened to Daryl's kid and his friend. I mean, one was a 12-year-old, one was an 8-year-old, and he was fairly small for a 12-year-old. Is that you hear these stories, and it makes sense to me that they would be more willing to reveal themselves, the children, not for any type of, fairy tale mystical reason other than just they're smaller. They're smaller and therefore be less potentially threatening. So although I'm not advising anyone bringing their kid on any serious Bigfoot research, but yeah, I do think it's a good method. I guess it's just you're right. I think it's something where they're going to have to be willing, or it's something like what happened to me where we were very lucky. I mean, we had the report that happened at the base of the hill. We didn't think we were going to see anything, but we would go to the top of the hill where I think it turned out there were still at least a couple hanging around. And since it was such a steep hill, and I remember as we were going up, we didn't have any guns, and we weren't like in any kind of like stalking, like we're going to get, because we didn't really think we're going to see anything like that. We're just kind of la-di-daing up the hill. Who knows? Maybe if it was that same one, the light one that the kids had seen that was there, which I think in all probability was, maybe they thought initially that's who was coming up the hill were these kids again. And then they saw my sorry ass and said, "Oh, get the hell out of here. He makes movies." Jesus.
Yeah, well, I think once you guys came over the hill and they saw who you were, they must have known the jig was up.
Yeah,
now we're going to have to move. Jeez, there goes the neighborhood.
This idiot. Okay. So, finally, I think it's a great method. It's just someone who's willing in an area where they think that they probably are. But again, it's such, to randomly pick anything, it would almost have to be someone, a woman who is scientifically oriented, has dedication, who actually, without a doubt, sees one, is in this area, and then decides to give this a go and goes into these zones, and either whatever method she tries to use to get close, maybe that would work. It seems to me it could very well work.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Of course, it depends on whether the Sasquatches want to cooperate. They have to be invited to the party. But if anything's going to work, then maybe some dedicated biology woman. I know there was one who would fit that description, who was working an area in Kentucky for more than a year, but I haven't heard that anything came of it. Hey, listen, you know what? We have completed our 90 minutes.
Wow.
Believe it or not.
It's crazy.
Time flies. So I want to thank you for showing up on the show for us, Scott. It was great to have you here. You're always very entertaining to listen to. I know our guests, our listeners enjoyed it. And maybe we can have you on again sometime.
Sure. And give my best to Billy. I hope everything is fine. And thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, I'll tell him that you send your love.
Yeah.
Hey, but you know what? Before we go, let people know again where they can get your movies.
Oh, yeah. Well, watching. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Oh, okay. Sorry. That British lady came on in my. You are now in the co-host queue. I go, okay, fine. Yeah, you can get them at Amazon and just do a search on Squatching, and both Squatching and Journey Toward Squatchdom are available on one DVD, and they're at Amazon. It's the only place you can currently get them.
All right.
And thanks.
No problem, man. Thank you, and everybody. I got my switchboard turned off, which probably happened when you heard that British lady talking to you. So I can't play the outro music, but I will say goodbye to everybody. Hope we'll see you again next week, and thanks again, Scott. It was a great show. And next week we'll have Billy back, everybody. So be sure to tune in just to say welcome back to him. Thank you again, Scott. We'll talk to you another time.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Be delighted this holiday season at Ice and Lights, the Winter Village at Cameron Run. Just minutes from Old Town Alexandria. Stroll through the park and enjoy winter photo ops, light displays, hot chocolate, and a warm treat. The Winter Village offers playtime for the entire family. Extend the magic of the holidays by visiting early, starting November 17th. Get your tickets now at CameronIceandLights.com. That's CameronIceandLights.com.
Lucky Land Casino asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess? Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually. Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.